In the heart of the Bantu wetlands, where the reeds whispered forgotten stories and the air carried the scent of old magic, lay the village of Mbulu. The people of Mbulu lived simply, their days guided by the sun and their nights guarded by the croaking songs of the swamp frogs. The elders called them Nzoku Yamaji, the water spirits, but children knew them as just frogs, until the day they croaked too loud. It started 3 days before the new school term. "Ma, the frogs are following me again." Little Malaika, only 8 years old, came running barefoot through the red clay paths, her school uniform half-buttoned and her hair frizzed from the humid dawn. Her mother, Mama Chiku, was busy peeling yams in a woven calabash bowl near the fire pit. Again, with these frog stories? Mama Chiku sighed. "You better be more worried about the exam than the swamp frogs." "But they were watching me," Malaika whispered, eyes wide. One of them stood like a man. It had a necklace. Mama Chiku froze. "A necklace," she repeated slowly. Malaika nodded. "A red bead, like Baba used to wear before he disappeared." Silence fell over the compound. The firewood cracked. No one in Mbulu talked about the missing people anymore. It had been years since the first adult vanished into the swamp. They'd blamed crocodiles, spirits, rebels, but never frogs. Until now. At the center of Mbulu stood an ancient fig tree, wide as a hut and older than memory. Beneath its shade, the council of elders gathered each full moon. Elder Oak, the storyteller, stood up that evening, his walking stick trembling slightly as he addressed the others. "There's unrest in the water," he said. "Last night I dreamt of frogs, walking upright, speaking in the tongue of men." The younger elders laughed. "A dream is a dream, Och," said Elder Nene, rolling his eyes. "You're too old. Let the swamp be the swamp." But Och's eyes burned. "The frogs wear beads now, like the warriors of the old kingdom." Now they grew silent. Only one person had ever mentioned that, Baba Rashidi, Malaika's father, before he vanished 10 years ago, and no one ever listened to him either. Mbulu had one school bus, a rusting yellow machine nicknamed Kaleli because of its loud, rattling engine. Every morning, it picked up children from Mbulu and neighboring villages, then made its long journey to Mazingira Primary School across the wetlands. That Friday, the driver, Uncle Timo, noticed something strange. The frogs were lined up on the side of the road, hundreds of them. Big, small, green, red, all facing the road, silent, still. Uncle Timo slowed the bus. His hands trembled. "Are those frogs saluting us?" whispered Kito, one of the older students. Uncle Timo didn't answer. He turned the radio louder and drove faster. But deep inside, his gut twisted. Frogs don't watch like that. That night the sky turned a strange color, purple clouds with glowing green lightning. And at the edge of the swamp, by the old bamboo bridge, something emerged, a frog, 6 feet tall, muscular, wearing a necklace of red beads and human teeth. He croaked once, and behind him rose an army, 1,000 frogs all standing upright. They didn't hop, they marched. At the center of their formation stood a wooden crate. Inside it was an old walkie-talkie glowing faintly. "Tomorrow," the tall frog croaked, "the children shall pay for their father's sins." And deep in the Swamp King, once human, growled. Far from Mbulu, in the nearby city of Mgmkongwe, a retired journalist named Nurubako sat staring at a folder labeled Operation Maji. It had been a military experiment from 20 years ago. Classified, denied, forgotten. Nuru once covered it. Frogs injected with human DNA, enhanced to survive climate collapse. Designed to follow orders. Then they vanished. He had written about it, and no one believed him. Now, A child's drawing sent from Mbulu reached his table, a sketch of a frog with red beads and human eyes. Nuru picked up his recorder and whispered, "If you're hearing this, it has begun." The sun rose, orange and defiant. The school children gathered, unaware of what waited ahead. Malaika boarded the bus with her friends, Juma, Ayo, and Nima. The bus rumbled down the dusty road as usual, laughter echoing from inside, but as they neared the swamp bend, the road was blocked by frogs, and not just standing, armed, with sharpened sticks, bows, nets. Uncle Timo hit the brakes. The children screamed. One frog stepped forward, red beads, tall as a man. "Children of Mbulu," it said in perfect Swahili. "Your parents caged us, poisoned us, cut our kin for experiments. Now we reclaim what was stolen." The bus shook. The frogs began to surround it. Uncle Timo tried to reverse. Too late. The tires burst with a loud pop. Spiked vines had been laid beneath. The dirt. Then, from behind the trees, drums, croaking in rhythm. War had arrived. The bus stood motionless, half sunk in the wet roadside near the Mbulu Swamp bend. Mud reached its tires, vines clutched at its frame like greedy hands, and the croaking, rhythmic, deep, and unnatural, filled the air like war drums echoing through history. Inside, children huddled together. Nima sobbed into Malaika's shoulder. Juma gripped a broken seat rod, shaking. Uncle Timo had locked the doors, but they all knew it was useless. Outside, the army of frogs, 200, maybe more, surrounded them with eerie stillness. Some were the size of men, some barely the size of fists, yet each had purpose, intelligence. And then, the lead frog stepped forward. He was different, taller than a man, dressed in a belt made from old uniform cloths, red beads dangling across his chest like a warrior chief. His eyes, human, his voice, deep, unnatural. "Children of Mbulu," he croaked, "do not fear. You are not enemies. Yet. But you will. Listen. His name was Bwana Chura, the swamp general." Uncle Timo made a sudden move. He turned the ignition, slammed his foot on the gas, and shouted, "Hold on tight." The engine roared. For a second, hope flickered. Then a massive thud hit the windshield. The glass shattered. A tree frog, giant, blue, and glowing, had landed square in front. The vines under the wheels tightened and lifted the bus 2 feet off the ground. Gasps erupted. Frogs with bulging throats chanted in an ancient tongue, "Nguvu ya maji, amka sasa, nguvu ya maji, amka sasa." And slowly, the swamp itself moved. A section of earth split apart. Water gushed out, and the bus, shaking, groaning, was pulled onto a hidden dirt path deeper into the swamp, as if the land itself obeyed the frogs. The children screamed. The bus disappeared into the jungle. After what felt like hours, the bus came to a halt, inside an open glade surrounded by black water and vines. Dozens of frogs hopped forward and cut the tires, dropped logs beneath the bus, and locked its wheels into the ground. The children were trapped. One by one, they were pulled out, not violently, but in eerie silence. Frogs held out webbed hands as if ushering them to a sacred ritual. There were no words, just the croak rhythm guiding them. And then they saw it. A temple, carved of stone and roots, with ancient drawings of frogs and humans standing side by side. Above the temple gate hung a broken school sign, Mbulu Academy of Science. Juma whispered, "That's where my mom used to work, before it burned down." No one spoke. Inside the temple they were brought before an old frog, smaller, slower, but glowing with a silver aura. He sat on a mat of bones and water lilies, and he spoke. "I am Manzi Kiboko, first of the enlightened. This war is not yours, but you will be the message. As the children were given food, roasted yam slices and mango juice, strangely familiar, strangely fresh, the story began. Mzi Kiboko croaked softly, and the temple lit up with moving images. Like shadows on water, a flashback played out. 25 years ago, a team of African scientists, some of them from Mbulu, began testing genetic enhancements using frog DNA and ancestral memory theories. They believed frogs carried spiritual memory of the land, and combining that with human empathy would create a peaceful species that could survive rising climate disasters. But the government turned the project military. Operation Maji began. Splicing, training, controlling, they taught frogs to obey. To spy, to kill, until they revolted. They learned too fast, Mzi Kiboko whispered. And the worst part, we loved our creators, but they feared us. Bwana Chura added, we did not begin with war. They set fire to the lab, burned our young, buried us. Now they had returned. As the story ended, Malaika stepped forward. What do you want with us? She asked, her voice steady despite her fear. We're just kids. Mzi Kiboko turned to her, staring. Then he croaked, Child of Rashidi, come closer. Malaika froze. How do you know my father's name? Bwana Chura approached and removed a small pouch from around his neck. Inside was a photo. Old, torn, water-stained. It was her father, smiling with a young frog on his shoulder. He was one of the first to treat us like kin, Kiboko said. He vanished because he joined us. Gasps filled the temple. Malaika fell to her knees. Where is he? She sobbed. Bwana Chura turned away. In the deep swamp, guarding the gate, a heavy silence settled. The frogs weren't here just to punish. They wanted to send a message to humanity, one that couldn't be ignored. We will not kill the children, Bwana Chura declared, but they must carry a truth back. One that burns, so that no other lab, no other swamp, is touched again. Juma spoke up. But how? We can't just walk home. Mzi Kiboko smiled. We'll return you. In a new bus. By the next dawn, a strange vehicle arrived at the swamp's edge. It looked like a school bus, but it was made of bamboo, vines, and magic. It floated. It glowed faintly. Inside, frogs had painted messages on the walls. Remember us. We feel too. Your future depends on our peace. The children were escorted in. Uncle Timo, badly shaken, whispered, This never happened. But it had. As the frog army saluted, the magical bus floated away. Back toward Mbulu Nurubako, the retired journalist listened to static on his old radio. Then a child's voice broke through. Mzi Nuru, they're real. The frogs are awake. They took us. They talked, and they have names. The tape clicked off. Nuru stood slowly and picked up his camera. Time to tell the world. The bamboo bus cruised through mist and morning light, swaying softly over marsh and mangrove. A gentle frog hum echoed in the vines, like an ancient lullaby. Inside, the children were quiet. But Malaika could not rest. The image of her father, smiling beside a frog, haunted her. Why didn't he come for me? Is he even still human? Just then, the bus slowed, not by road, by presence. A thick fog formed, golden and green, and a frog elder climbed aboard. It was Waziri Yintetezi, the keeper of paths. He bowed his head and croaked, Child of Rashidi, the king has summoned you. The children gasped, but Malaika stood up. I'll go, Juma protested. She can't go alone. Waziri lifted his hand. She will not be alone. One of you must walk with her, for the Swamp King only reveals truth in witnessed presence. Juma volunteered. So did Nima. But Malaika looked at Tatu, the quiet girl who hadn't spoken once since the attack. "You," she said gently. "You saw more than anyone, didn't you?" Tatu nodded slowly, her eyes shimmering with strange understanding. Together, they stepped off the bus and followed Waziri down a hidden trail known only to the enlightened frogs. The mud was warm. The air buzzed with spirits, and soon the jungle opened into a glowing cavern of bioluminescent mushrooms and suspended lily orbs. At the center, a great throne made of bones, roots, and light, and upon it sat a man. His beard was moss. His eyes glowed blue-green. His skin had markings like frog veins pulsing faintly. He was not fully human anymore, but Malaika knew him. Baba. Rashidi opened his eyes, slow and full of memory. "Malaika," he whispered, "I dreamed of you. Every night for 10 years. Tears streamed down her face. She ran to him, but as she reached out, her hand touched wet skin, not warm flesh. He was changing still, not dying, not alive, something in between." Rashidi began to speak, not just with words, but memories that flowed into Malaika's mind like a stream of spirit water. She saw it all. The first lab where he worked, trying to combine frog DNA with healing. Codes. The betrayal when the government demanded weaponization. His choice to save the frogs, burn the data, and disappear. The day he stepped into the swamp willingly, and merged with its power to protect it from those who would come again. "Yea, became part of the gate, Malaika," he said. "I watch. I remember. I guard. But I cannot return." Malaika fell to her knees. "But I need you. The world needs you." He looked at her, and Tatu, then said, "The world needs you now. You are the bridge. You carry both legacies." Suddenly, frogs gathered around. Some beat on lily drums. Others swayed. A soft chant began to rise. "Ulio sahau, sasa wakumbuke. Walio dulumu, sasa wasiki." Malaika felt it in her chest, a memory not her own. An energy, ancient and deep, began to stir inside her. Her hands glowed faintly green. Rashidi placed a single lily seed in her palm. "This will bloom only in truth. Carry it with care." Then he sang a final line of the ancient song, and vanished into the roots. The swamp had claimed him fully, but he had left behind hope. Waziri guided Malaika and Tatu back to the magical bus. As they stepped aboard, the other children gasped at the change in her. Malaika wasn't just their friend anymore, she had become something more, a voice of the swamp. When the bus reached Mbulu outskirts, it halted. Waiting on the road were government vehicles, soldiers, drones, cameras. Nurubako, the old journalist, stepped forward with a mic. "What happened out there?" he asked. Malaika stepped down, holding the lily seed, and she said, "We were taken, but not by monsters. We were shown what humans did, and what frogs remembered. This swamp is not yours to cut. It is not yours to steal. It is alive, and it will defend itself." Then she raised the seed. It bloomed into a glowing lily, and the sky darkened. Inside a steel office, the Minister of Interior watched the footage. He frowned. "They're uniting. The frogs, the children, even the press." An aide said, "Shall we order a strike?" He hesitated. "No, not yet. Let's see what happens next." Back at Mbulu's school, the children were welcomed as survivors, then silenced by officials. But the story spread anyway, through old radios, street murals, and village griots. And in the swamp, under the moonlight, the frogs gathered again. "Bwana, Chura stood tall. The seed has left our hands. The war is now a dance of memory and truth." He looked to the stars. The Swamp King sleeps, but his daughter is awake. Mbulu was no longer a sleepy town. Drones circled, reporters camped, soldiers stood at the edges of the swamp with flamethrowers, guns, and machines meant to cleanse amphibian infestation. At the center of it all, General Kalu, a hard man with a silver badge and no patience for frog stories. At 0600 hours, we begin the sweep, he ordered. We burn the swamp, no survivors. But deep in the heart of the jungle, the frogs were ready. Their chants filled the trees. We do not run. We do not hide. Our memory will remain. And so did Malaika. In the center of the sacred grove, Malaika sat cross-legged, holding the glowing lily her father gave her. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Beside her, Juma, Nima, Tatu, and Waziri. A council of sorts. Young, brave, torn. Juma whispered, "We can't fight them. Not like this." Waziri answered, "You must not fight them like humans. You must awaken them." Suddenly, the lily opened, and a spirit image of Rashidi appeared. He spoke calmly, "Daughter, the world will not change through battle, but it will bow to truth. You must show them." Malaika stood. Her body glowed faintly green, her eyes like twin moons. "I know what to do." As the sun rose, soldiers lined. Up, flamethrowers aimed, drones buzzed. General Kalu raised his hand. On my signal, but he stopped, because from the swamp came a sound unlike any other. It wasn't a frog croak. It wasn't a scream. It was a song, soft, layered, haunting. Malaika stepped from the vines, surrounded by frogs, and began to sing in the old tongue. They remember when you poisoned. They remember when you stole. But they also remember when you wept, when you fed, when you healed. Each note awoke memories in those watching. Soldiers began to lower their weapons. Even General Kalu twitched. And then the lily in Malaika's hand burst into light and memory. Suddenly, every screen nearby, every drone, every phone, every satellite broadcast Rashidi's full confession, his research, his sacrifice, his final words. If they burn us, they will burn the cure they seek. The world watched and gasped. As tension thickened, a new sound arose behind the soldiers. Drums. Feet marching. It was the mothers of Mbulu. Women from the village wrapped in kiteng, holding signs, "Not in our name." Frogs are part of us. Rashidi was our son. They sang the same swamp song. The soldiers didn't know what to do. The general shouted, "Stand your ground!" But no one moved. At that moment, Buanatura emerged from the swamp, ancient, regal. He raised his webbed hands, and in perfect English he croaked, "We do not seek war. We seek respect. We offer healing, memory, and peace." He walked right up to General Kalu and said, "Will you kill memory?" Kalu's hands shook, and then, slowly, he dropped his weapon. "No, I will not." The sun climbed higher. Children hugged frogs. The press broadcast scenes of unity. New treaty was drafted, the Mbulu Accord, signed by humans and frogs alike. No weapons testing in natural zones. Shared research under joint councils. Swamp declared sacred heritage site. Malaika named cultural ambassador of species memory. The world watched in awe. For the first time in modern history, a peace agreement was brokered not between nations, but between species. Weeks later, Malaika returned to the heart of the swamp. The throne of the Swamp King was now covered in vines. But the air was warm and peaceful. She placed the lily, now faded, into the stream. Baba We did it. A frog jumped nearby and softly croaked. She smiled. In the years to come, stories of that day were told across Africa. Children sat by fires, wide-eyed, and the tale always ended the same way. And that is how a girl, a frog, and a flower stopped a war, not with teeth or steel, but with memory and song. And in some swamps, if you listened closely, you could still hear the song.